Well, let's get more now on the political crisis in South Korea. Our North America correspondent Carrington Clarke joins us. Carrington, the US says it was given no prior warning about this move by the president to invoke martial law. What's been the reaction there?
Yeah, I mean, this was a shocking sequence of events, both for the people of South Korea, but it also appears that the United States, South Korea's key ally, was caught completely unaware of the plans of President Yoon to declare martial law overnight. President Biden is currently in Africa on a tour. Now, the White House says he was kept up to date about the political crisis as it unfolded in Korea overnight their time, but they were not given warning. The Pentagon says that the US forces in Korea did not change their posture. Now, the United States has nearly 30,000 troops stationed in South Korea. They're mostly there to keep peace between South Korea and North Korea, which are still technically at war with only an armistice in place. But importantly, they are the first line of defense, the United States, as the United States sees it, against the nuclear-armed North Koreans. And there was obviously concern that into a power vacuum, as it appeared through those quite chaotic few hours when martial law was declared, that perhaps that could have been used as an opportunity by either the North Koreans or also by the strategic rival of the United States, China. Now, it does not appear that that has played out, and given how quickly the South Korean President Yoon, backed down from this plan, it appears that perhaps we have gotten through the worst part of this chaos. But there is no clear roadmap from here about what happens to President Yoon's government and whether or not he can remain in power. Now, the background to all of this, of course, is that President Yoon is about halfway through his 5-year presidential term. During this year's elections, the opposition won overwhelmingly in the National Assembly vote. They've used that majority to stifle much of his agenda. He's increasingly looked like a lame duck leader. And although he said that this martial law declaration was about giving him the ability to root out anti-national sentiment, domestic rivals effectively, there did not appear to be, to most experts, any reason for such an extraordinary measure to put into place. They are not in a current state of hot war, despite the ongoing war between them and North Korea. So this was an extraordinary sequence of events, but it does appear that the US is satisfied at this point now that President Yoon has backed down.
Yeah, so, I mean, the US government is saying that its alliance with South Korea is ironclad, but has it been tested by this?
I think they were concerned and would continue to be concerned that their key ally, did not give them a warning that he was going to declare such a measure. I mean, this has tested the military and their alliance. Was it to the commander-in-chief, which is the president, or is it to the National Assembly, the legislature in South Korea? And although the United States says that they did not need to change their posture, this did seem to cause ructions throughout the major departments over here, including State and the Pentagon. They were obviously working very quickly to get assurances from their colleagues in South Korea about this situation. And South Korea likes to promote itself as one of the bastions of democracy. It holds constant conferences about trying to spread democracy around the world. It's one of, they say, their strengths compared to the North Korean regime. But you also need to remember that South Korea is still a relatively young democracy. Up until 1988, they were ruled by an at times brutal military dictatorship. And for many Koreans, this is obviously a horrible reminder of the worst days of that control. And although Korea has had a patchy history with democracy in recent decades, this is the first time in recent history that one leader has attempted to seize absolute control through military might. It appears that President Yoon has failed in that mission, but this is now a major question about how the country's systems of government deal with such a situation, and whether or not the president can continue in that role. Now, an impeachment process in South Korea requires a 2/3 majority vote in the National Assembly. The opposition parties do not have that in their current coalition. But given that even some members of President Yoon's own party have criticised this decision, it is possible that we will now see movements to take him from power. And then, of course, that live question about whether or not he'll be prosecuted, as many other former South Korean leaders have been in recent years.
And Carrington, I've got to ask, I mean, you worked as a correspondent in Seoul. What were you thinking as you heard this turn of events going on?
So when President Yoon first came to the political fore while I was in South Korea in 2021, part of his promotion was that he was outside the usual political system. He actually came to prominence as a prosecutor for prosecuting another former president who then was subsequently sentenced to a couple of decades in jail. And so in some ways, this is unexpected, obviously, the way that this played out, but Korea does have a history of people taking to the streets in order to put pressure on government. So when we started to first see those scenes of people taking to the streets in opposition to the military, which had been deployed to the streets, particularly around Seoul and around the National Assembly, it reminded me of other situations we've seen in the past. But this was a test. My people I know in South Korea were deeply concerned about how this was playing out. And although it was only a few short hours when it really was a chaotic situation, this was a test of the country's institutions. They appear to have held at this point. But as I say, there is a live question now about how some sense of normalcy can be restored and whether or not President Yoon can effectively carry out the duties of the presidency, given how this has played out.
North America correspondent Carrington Clarke, thank you.